Friends, welcome back to another Field and Garden podcast. It is your friend in flowers, Lisa Mason Ziegler, and I am really glad to be here with you. Now, before we jump into this subject that I'm not sure I've ever really talked about this, the whole collaboration versus competition, fear, worry that we have. I just want to invite, if you are a newbie here, if this is your first time, I am so glad, friend, that you are here. And if you want to learn more about the work that we do in addition to this podcast, you'll find it all over at thegardenersworkshop.com, which we call home base to everything we do. You'll find over there our fully stocked online garden shop that offers only the same tools, seeds, and supplies that I use, meaning if I don't use it, we just don't really sell it, as well as an online library of courses. There is our sister podcast, Seed Talk, and y'all, there is so many resources over there, videos and blogs, and you just go over there and fall in. So I wanted just to make you aware of that, as well as you can connect and learn more about the Flower Farmer Club, which is my membership. And all of that is over at thegardenersworkshop.com. So today I wanted to just say a little bit about, kind of share my experience and to reassure folks that it really can be greener on the other side. And we're kind of calling this why collaboration beats competition. And why are we so afraid of competition, right? It is very valid, y'all, first off. It can be things like, we're concerned about limited market share concerns. We want to protect the time and money that we've invested. We get a little territorial about that, and I totally understand that. Then there's the pricing pressure. If you have competition and, you're hearing that maybe somebody else's is more than yours or less than yours, and that comes into play, right? And we really just don't want to lose the customers that we have killed ourselves to get, right? We have worked so very, very hard. And then we have concerns about oversaturation, which I understand that as well, but all of these concerns, in my experience, all have flip sides that we're leaving on the table. And we're just learning more and more about this as there are more flower growers, which have forced us to pursue different avenues. And so we are just learning more and more. And I just think of that old saying, a rising tide lifts all boats. And what that means is when there's more of us, it creates more demand for everybody in the overall market. It improves and benefits everybody that's participating in that market, even when some of the players are stronger or bigger and more successful than those that are smaller, weaker. We all have our place in the market, meaning the place that we're in right now. And I often thinking about listening to students who are frustrated, worrying about this very subject. And I don't really know any other way to say it than we all have to put in our time. I spent years doing what I feel like now was spinning my wheels all those years ago, because we didn't have all these resources and support that we have today. But y'all, I didn't sell all of my flowers all of the time. The first 10 years of my flower farming business, I was like a blindfolded, grasping, not knowing what to do and not selling my flowers. We all have to put some rubber in the game. And I just don't want people automatically run to, it's the competition is why I am bringing this up. And that's not really the case. What I have found after counseling thousands of students and talking to my peers. And it just really depends on where you are in the journey too, right? I mean, if you're wounded right now, you're saying, but that is just not true, Lisa. You know, I'm experiencing this, and I understand that I am the first one to put a blind eye to a potential solution fix for something I'm suffering through, because I just feel like nothing can help me. Do you know? So I want to just say I have sympathy. I understand. But I also want you to know there is another side to all of these problems. And kind of what I'm talking about today is that journey. So I have found that what I want you to think of is I think of community / competition. The community is your old competition. It's maybe still kind of your competition, but that is the same people. And I have learned and found and experienced that community, which I used to view as my competition, is now my go-to place for getting smart, sharing knowledge, right? For when I need support, networking, problem solving, and then of course there's the basic inspiration and motivation to actually get down to business, right? So let's just talk with that part first about finding inspiration. And you know what I find when you hang with those people that are on the same journey as you, not necessarily on the same section of road as you are. Some are ahead of you and some are behind you. But when we all have the same end goal in mind, it's amazing what actually takes place, you know, because what happens is people share innovations and ideas and creative approaches to things that just spark such incredible perspective on farming and business, both sides of it. And, you know, y'all, that's something I just had an epiphany this morning. You know, I so often hear from flower farmers, oh my gosh, I just want to grow the flowers and I don't, want to face the business. I'm not good at that. Why shouldn't we be good at farming and at business? That's a subject for another day, but yeah, totally am on that. So the fresh perspective on farming and business is an aspect of this community that I absolutely love. And so here's the thing that I think of. It's like, how awesome is it as a beginner, aspiring or new flower farmer, or somebody that's just dreaming, to be a part of a community and to express a concern about something they're facing. And somebody that's maybe a little ahead of you or somebody that's years ahead of you to chime in and say, oh my gosh, I faced that same problem, and guess what I did? I did this. I mean, something you haven't even thought of and considered, right? That hasn't even come in on your radar. And it's those kinds of hacks that I find so incredibly valuable. And I'll tell you something else. Somebody like me that's, almost 30 years in, y'all, can you absolutely cannot believe that is true. But there are so many things that don't even come on my radar now when I'm talking to somebody. It's been so long since I faced that particular problem as a beginner. But somebody that's only a couple of years ahead of that person in that same community, it is fresh and raw. And what I'm saying is there's a enormous benefit to have people at all stages in together with the same goal. And then there's hacks like this. I had one of the greatest hacks that I got from Dave Dowling. This was before he was an instructor for us here at the Gardener's Workshop. And this is where he and I were peers and we would see each other at conferences. And I was in a class, taking a class about, he was teaching, I guess it was about farmers markets. the logistics of that, packing up your vehicle and what you need, tents, insurance, all that kind of stuff. And back then, I did not have a full-size van. I was actually using a pickup truck with a cap on the back, and my dad had made this really cool wooden rack that that slid in and out, that my buckets went in. And Dave saved me so much by sharing that you can fit so many more flowers in a vehicle packing it by not pre-making bouquets and packing them in your vehicle to take, because you can pack more flowers in a bucket than you can bouquets in a bucket. When you start making bouquets, they get really wide really fast. And he's exactly right. And it revolutionized my world, because we went to a really busy farmer's market, and I was never able to pack all of our flowers in, because guess what, y'all? I was spending the day before making all the bouquets and taking them with me. That little hack of learning from somebody ahead of me changed my world. I mean, it affected my bottom line. And I just can't tell you how I would have never learned that had I not been in the presence of a bunch of other flower farmers. And I tell you another one, thinking about, I always tend to focus on, where am I selling my flowers? Where am I going to sell my flowers? I always think the last time I sold my flowers to you this week, maybe the last time I sell them to you, for whatever reason. All kinds of stuff. People go out of business. People get miffed at you and you don't even realize it, right? Or another flower farmer comes and steals your customer. There's so many reasons. And so I'm always in that mindset. So I'm always exploring new sales possibilities. And here is a sales hack that I would have never heard if I had not been in a community that had people growing and selling flowers. And this person was actually one of my students, and she shared a hack that she worked for a large employer. Like a complex, like thousands of people right there. How she built her entire business around a bouquet subscription that she actually delivered to her coworkers. So it was amazing, y'all. It was with somebody, she just did not know how she was going to sell her flowers. She was still working full time. It was all she could do to grow flowers, how much less, travel around and try to market them. We'd have never learned about that if we hadn't been in a community together and somebody had expressed that they just don't know how they're going to sell their flowers. And she chimed in. Inspiration in a community is priceless. And I say this first because I think so many of us think of this community that I'm speaking of as competition. You have to take those glasses off, y'all, and put community back at the forefront of those glasses. Now, we will build stronger markets together. When farmers collaborate together, it makes for better local markets. It's that same concept of a rising tide benefits everybody, right? And I think of building stronger markets, pooling resources is a huge one. I could see that two small growers that live, I'm thinking, I'm in the city, right? And I'm thinking, all right, if I feel like I have a great opportunity because I am in the city to sell endless bouquet subscriptions. It's only limited by your ability to market them. But then you start getting scared that you might not have enough flowers. Why not collaborate with another local farmer for you all to build a bouquet subscription together? And maybe you don't have to grow every single flowers. You split. There's the opportunities to pool resources. And then the other side of that is a great little story. Someone that became one of my dearest friends Amy of Amy's Garden, Amy's Organic Garden. I think that's the official name. You have to follow her on social if you don't already. Amy's Organic Gardening. She's located in Charles City, Virginia, so you can make sure it's her that you're on. Amy and her husband George are full-time flower and vegetable farmers. I mean, they do big. They grow a lot of stuff, y'all. They started about the same time I did, so they're almost hitting their third decade. And Amy and I met because when the first farmers market came to our area almost 30 years ago at the Williamsburg Farmers Market, she came as a vegetable grower selling sunflowers, and I was the flower vendor. Well, I was a little intimidated by that. Of course, I mean, I was dumber than a box of rocks back then, right? And I was very intimidated, but me being the social butterfly that I am, I just we met at the meeting, but then once we set up in the first day of the market, I just went over and we just became fast friends. And we started pooling resources. Sometimes, we ordered stuff together. We shared things together. We powwowed about stuff. And it built the flower market at that market because we actually asked to be located right across from each other. So it's like people were able to see both of what we had. And we just stopped being competitors and became a part of a community. It was really amazing. And I want to tell you the best example of building stronger markets together, and that is the launch that is happening this last 10 years of collectives, a collective or a co-op. For those of you that aren't familiar, that's where farmers band together. There's so many different business models to do this, and I'm not going to go into those. We actually have a course, Collectives 101, that's like an introduction to this type of model. This co-op / collective model is where local farmers band together with their products so that commercial buyers have a one-stop shop. It's like, I think, the future of domestic flower farming. It is showing over and over and over again that we should not be afraid of competition, that we have to come together and embrace it. Some of the great ones that you can check out, the Seattle Growers Market was one of the originals, I believe. There's the Philly Flower Guild now that is just booming. I mean, I was so pleased to see they had to build a bigger cooler at the end of last year. It's just amazing how the thing that we're so afraid of is actually the secret key to success in all areas, in community, and coming together. And then another part of this community atmosphere is lifting each other up. The professional benefits of having emotional support and encouragement is phenomenal, y'all. And, for me, whether it was when I started flower farming 30 years ago or today as I face larger challenges, but I'm facing the same challenges that you are. I face waking up on a day and thinking, what am I doing? I am not qualified to do this. I have lost my mind. I go into immediate, how can I just end it all? Not end it all like, I'm not me. That was a bad choice of words. I mean, to stop the business. And then I will go to one of the places that, I look to for support, and I hit the button to listen to a video, and this incredibly successful business person is talking about how terrified they are. And that's exactly what we should feel. What we have to really work on is how we react to that fear. Fear is what business is all about. And I just can't tell you how, if I didn't have that community to go to, I wouldn't be here. in business today. So some of these lifting each other up benefits that you may or may not be familiar with. First off, it's the networking. You will learn more from the yammering on a community board in a safe community than it's priceless, y'all. I mean, that's where it's the unexpected things that you learn there. And it is just really, really, for me, it's the unexpected surprises that are just littered in there. And then there's having a place where, some of the verbiage that I've seen people write, they have a big win they want to talk about, and they'll say something like, I knew if I came in here and told y'all about this, you got it. You understood how significant this is. And whether that was somebody sharing they had their first florist sale, or they sold out at the farmer's market, or they scored, 50 buckets from somewhere, I mean, that kind of stuff. This is your tribe. These are your people. That's what you want to feel about your community, is to be able to share those wins and have everybody rush over and doing, the cheerleading as you dance down the middle aisle, and everybody is yammering you on, I mean, that's literally what we see happen. And then, friends, there's the blisters. When you have a problem and then the scab gets yanked off. And this happens in business, y'all, which is some of the best lessons we learn, right? But this community where you feel safe and trusted, you know that you can go in there and bawl if you have to, and just really lament on what you are actually facing. Because again, that whole network that I was sharing about earlier, especially like if you are a newbie, to have another person that's maybe a year or two ahead of you come on and say, oh my gosh, I remember those days and I still face them, but it's going to get better. And then to have maybe even a more experienced person come in and say, what I learned from that, now that I'm 10 years in, this is what's happening. Y'all, I cannot tell you how inspiring and helpful that type of community is. And to be able to fully embrace this, you really have to be in a community that you do feel, I keep saying trusted and safe. And what I mean by that is to know that you're in a place with other people that have the same goal in mind. Because, I see it happen, particularly, on social media. Some people feel the full liberty to give tons of advice on things they've never done, and even to be not very kind about it sometimes. That is not a community. That's a sounding board. I'm not sure what I call that. But that's not the type of, and that's the only community I feel like a lot of people have experience with. And that's why I'm bringing to you, I've spoke previously in a podcast about my community. Well, my goal for that is to really create a space that, if you want a visual, that has a fence around it. And I guard that fence. I'm the door bouncer, meaning we want people to feel safe to be able to share anything in here, any vulnerabilities, screw ups, mistakes, because that's what business is all about. That's the reality. That's what you don't see out in the open public arena, because people are too scared to share that stuff because people attack them. And that's being in business, is making mistakes, making blunders, falling in potholes. And your best lessons sometimes are learned by sharing them, knowing that somebody's going to chime in and help you. And that's what the community that I've built is all about, for people to feel totally safe and trusted. And, this lifting each other up is where the most powerful things happen. Friends, I can tell you just so many instances of things that I never dreamed I would do, try, stick my neck out. And I did it with great success. And I only got the courage to do it because I was lifted up by a community member in a community. You know, this group is a community group as described, that I'm describing, is great in applying Band-Aids when you have an open wound and then helping you get over it, because the moral to my story about community/competition, people need to take off the competition glasses, join the right community that just flips the switch, because I believe that no one should have to face starting and running and growing and sustaining a flower farming business alone. Never. I mean, it's just, there's no point. That's really kind of like old school, y'all. Totally old school. Now, there is strength in numbers. I think of, is it salmon that swim upstream as a pack? Why do fish swim in a school? Protection. They go faster. There's just so many. And if you want to think of my community in that as a school of fish, and there's a lot of different seats within that school of fish, but we're all going in one direction, and that just changes everything. So friends, if that sounds inviting to you, I invite you to learn more about the Flower Farmer Club. And that's the community that I'm building in there. And, we've spent the past year just really tweaking it and finding out from, community members what they want and what they need, what can help them. And we are super excited about what's happening there. And I would love to meet you there. And you can learn more. They'll be in the show notes below this podcast. But also, you can always learn more about it over at thegardenersworkshop.com. Join the club, I think is right there on the homepage. Or to learn more about the club, get on the wait list if the doors are closed. Join by all means if they're open. And we were really excited. One of the new features we've just introduced recently is you can purchase an annual membership, which actually gives you 2 months free when you buy a year, which is really a great way to do it. You just get it out of the way. All of the content, there's lots of great features over there, and I'll just name a couple of them. First off, I feel like the community board, which works very much like Facebook, but it's not in Facebook, it's a private board, works the same, except you don't get totally shanghaied when you're going in to Facebook to look at your group and you start watching, golden retriever videos or other flower growers. You don't get pulled away. So it works the same. You can post videos and pictures and tag people and search the community board for previous conversations. But it's no ads, no tracking, all of that stuff is not a part of it. And then the features that we just see our members really embrace. And I do a masterclass once a month about appropriate seasonal topics, from marketing and making bouquets and irrigation and why we dry our leftover flowers and then what can we do with them, and lots of great master classes. And everything that I'm telling you about is cataloged and libraried over there. So when you get in, you can go and watch previous master classes that happen once a month. Then we have our Flower Farmer Forum, which is a monthly meetup where I do a little mini training, and then we do a live Q&A. You can submit questions beforehand or during. I do my weekly sewing circle where we actually, I sow seeds and talk about things and demonstrate what I'm doing. And a lot of our members also sow their seeds at that time and listen in. And then we have the Bloomcast, which is a private podcast. And friends, I'm sure I've missed something, but it is just a great place to be. And this is my personal invitation to you to join the Flower Farmer Club, because the more members, the richer it gets, and the more help and support that is offered and given. All right, friends, until we meet again, ciao.